The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
All right. The Blockchain Association says the trade group has filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the SEC seeking records relevant to Prometheum, a crypto broker. Our first guest is Ron Hammond, Blockchain Association's Director of Government Relations. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning. Tell us about what's happening here. Why are you filing this request, and what do you hope to find?
Yeah, so obviously the Prometheum timing was a little suspect. There was a pretty quiet firm. A lot of folks in DC especially really have never heard of these folks, but they did get approved for that special purpose broker-dealer license. And so what was obvious, though, in the hearing is that there seems to be a little suspicious timing, at least at the SEC, in regards to the Binance and Coinbase lawsuits as well. We have Prometheum being able to register, which will, in some idea, debunk the idea that there's no pathway to registration. But at the same time, there are a lot of suspect questions in terms of, A, the talking points that seem to be reiterating the SEC's lines that securities laws is clear. And then at the same time, there was also a lot of questions about the business model itself of Prometheum. And then finally, there's some ties to China as well. Now, mind you, again, they went through a CFIUS review as well as an SEC review as well on the China front. So, our belief is that they shored up on that end. But of course, a lot of folks in Capitol Hill especially are wondering, A, why was this the first firm to get this special purpose broker-dealer license, 2 years over the fact that it was introduced? And at the same time, it did seem a little suspicious that they were reiterating these talking points right when Congress is going through a pretty monumental bill right now between the House Ag Committee and Financial Services that would regulate and give a pathway for crypto exchanges to register.
Who invited them to speak to Congress?
It was a Democrat witness. So at least in Congress, they have the minority party. So in this case, in the House, they get one witness, and the Republicans had 4 in this case. And so now, mind you, again, a lot of times the Democrats or the minority party would talk to mostly their witnesses because they want to get their questions answered in a way that would support their agenda or support their policy. That's just how politics works. But actually, what was really curious, I was in the room itself too during the hearing, is a lot of the Democrat members talked to the Republican witnesses. Again, that's not typically usual to see. A lot of times they were actually asking some pretty substantive questions on the Democrat side. And there was a realm of skepticism around Prometheum. You can see how the members engaged with the CEO, Mr. Kaplan. There was a little hesitancy for some of these members, and in some cases, going completely contradictory to what he was trying to propose as the legitimate way forward. So I think we're seeing a big impetus here saying, look, we need legislation. And that was the SEC's talking points against the bill, is that there is no need for legislation. The rules are very clear for securities laws. And even those in Congress on both sides of the aisle said, it doesn't seem like that. And also there seems to be a little inconsistency here. So that's why we filed this FOIA request to really go after seeing what exactly was that communication between both the SEC and Prometheum leading up to the approval as well as this hearing.
All right. We have a clip from the hearing. You're going to see Prometheum co-CEO and founder Aaron Kaplan at the House Financial Services Committee right here.
There is a compliant path forward for crypto in the United States that the SEC has clearly laid out. Those who argue for new laws are simply not willing to comply with existing applicable securities laws and regulations. New legislation is not in the best interest of the investing public or the blockchain industry. Legislative efforts will take years to implement while the American public will continue to operate on reckless, unlawful platforms.
All right. Now, that clip was from the opening statement. Is there anything else that was said by co-CEO Aaron Kaplan that kind of triggered you to look into the relationship with the SEC a little bit further?
A couple things. First was Representative Mike Flood really did a good job. He's from Nebraska. He was hammering Kaplan saying, look, what digital assets or digital securities do you offer? Do you offer Bitcoin, Ethereum, and in the top 10 assets? And in regards to Bitcoin, Ethereum, he said that they don't offer it yet. And that was a little odd to see. Again, this is also a business that really doesn't have liquid assets to trade. And so there was a lot of confusion as to why this firm in particular, again, a firm that most folks in DC have not heard of. Again, Coinbase they've heard of. They've definitely heard of Binance for other different reasons. But Prometheum was kind of under the radar here. And again, on top of the additional communication efforts from the SEC in regards to these legislative hearings that Congress has been holding, I did a thread a couple days ago, just more analyzing, look, when there's a digital asset subcommittee hearing, there tends to be a tweet from the SEC on crypto that day or from Chair Gensler's account. There's also seemed to be a suspicious timing in terms of the Coinbase lawsuit in particular, related to the digital asset subcommittee and the ag committee on that legislation that McHenry and Thompson, the lead Republicans, are working on. So again, a lot of suspicious timing here. Mind you, it's politics. Some of these things are totally in their realm. But again, the odd part is the securities regulator. I mean, the SEC taking these political steps to really send a message to Congress that we don't need legislation, it's pretty odd. And right now, I would say a lot of folks in D.C., in my circle especially, have been talking, and it seems that we are shifting actually towards a pretty great narrative in terms of the SEC does look like they have egg on their face here. They are starting to lose the publicity war here, and a lot of folks are asking a lot of questions, both within Congress and outside, of the suspicious timing of a lot of these events. And so,
Do you think that part of the reason they got approval was because they weren't trading first? In other words, the Coinbases of the world kind of set up shop before they got any approvals. I kind of know what Binance did and whatever. So you have all these other entities sort of trading first and then getting the approvals. These guys seem to have held off, and they still haven't started anything. You think that's part? I'm sure you got called to Capitol Hill for some reason besides having a suit, which is a reason why some business networks let people on if they have a suit. Do you get to be a witness or something, a guest, but or host in my case. But do you think what do you think is the issue here? Do you think that was how they got the approval?
It remains to be seen. I think that's what the FOIA request is so important about, is just look how those communications between the SEC and Prometheum leading up to the approval, as well as after the fact, how did that look? And I think that's a lot of questions that the public deserve to at least have some answers to. And so that's why we went into it, not knowing exactly, again, what's happening behind the scenes here, but we'd love to have a little more light shown on this approval process. Again, the FOIA request will probably take some time, but I think it's an important thing for the public to understand. Again, especially in the wake of Congress here, working on legislation on this matter.
I got to ask, because it seems like, okay, look, they got approved. Shouldn't you be cheering it a little bit? Go, all right, granted, not everybody agrees with what people have to say on Capitol Hill. God knows I don't. I pull my hair out every time I watch C-SPAN. That said, they got approved. They're going to, potentially they'll be able to trade legally. Shouldn't we at least be, sort of well, you got to sell your soul to the devil, but hey, you got it done?
I think the irony is that there's only a very small subset of folks in D.C. and in the industry that think the rules are clear. And actually, even the CFTC Chair Benham, the week of the Coinbase lawsuit, said, look, there's a reason why I'm standing here in front of the Ag Committee. The rules are not clear. I do not know when it's my jurisdiction, but the SEC claims that we have little to no jurisdiction here. I'm here to say I disagree. We need to have legislation sent from Congress to actually make those lines clear. Whereas the SEC has taken the complete polar opposite narrative approach that, look, legislation is not needed. The security laws are very clear. And a lot of folks in the industry are saying, look, we're more in the camp here of the CFTC because we do not know exactly how to comply here. And this pathway forward from Prometheum seems a little suspect. Again, a firm that folks haven't really heard of. To your point, I think the FOIA request, though, will bring to light in terms of those communications, but it seems really suspect in timing. This is a very key pivotal moment. These next 3 or 4 weeks, actually, for Congress are going to be very, very important for the market structure bill between the Ag Committee and Financial Services. We could even see a vote in the committees sometime in July to move that bill forward to the House floor for a full vote in September. So there's a lot happening in Congress. That the SEC seems to be trying to send a message that, nope, we do not think this should be happening here. And mind you, again, this is Democrats and Republicans who are backing this proposal, at least at this stage. And that's a pretty scary line for the SEC to see that, hey, look, there's a path forward potentially for this bill. A lot of crypto bills have died before, actually pretty much all of them. But an odd thing today, or tomorrow actually, is the Senate Banking is having a markup. They're actually voting on legislation for the first time in 4 years. So they're actually moving legislation forward. And if they're able to get their Democrat colleagues in the Senate to say, hey, look, this crypto regulatory bill is very important, this bill could get to the president's desk. And again, it's a very slim, long shot here, but it has the best shot of any crypto bill to date in the 6+ years I've been working on in this space.
You know, there's been a lot of chatter about this story we're talking about in the industry. Preston Byrne, partner at Brown Rudnick, tweeted recently that Aaron has been working on Prometheum since at least 2015. He comes from a family of lawyers that has a law firm in Manhattan. He goes on to say, you know, the issue is just that nobody noticed him until now, and said that there's nothing fishy. How would you respond to those who share this view?
I'm not going to get into the conspiracy theories here or the connections at time because, again, that's what they are. They're just theories and rumors here. I've seen plenty of folks in D.C. try to hire folks in the SEC and hope that they can get some form of regulatory approval or at least move the ball forward or at least not be viewed in a bad light. But typically, those have fallen flat. I mean, that's just not how you win political favors, and especially with the SEC's approach of the chair really leading the direction of the agency in a pretty hostile way towards the industry. I think that's something that is a little bit of a stretch. But at the same time, again, it shows that the rules just really aren't clear. And there's a lot of confusion here. But the only people who are saying the rules are clear are Prometheum and the SEC. And again, small folks at the SEC, Chair Gensler differs from Hester Peirce, for example, one of the other Republican commissioners. But a large majority of folks in D.C., both in Congress and in the CFTC and other agencies, including Janet Yellen. Janet Yellen, the Secretary of Treasury, testified actually 3 hours before the first hearing on crypto with Kaplan, that there needs to be some legislation on non-security tokens, as well as stablecoins and a few other areas like spot market regulation. Again, the Democrat Treasury is being countered to the SEC chair, who's also a Democrat. So having these political cross lines here is really the reason why we're passing this bill.
I mean, it sounds like you don't have much love for the Democrats. Preston Byrne. I mean, look, if Preston Byrne has said he's known this guy and he's seen this guy at work for however many years, I've known Preston Byrne for years as well. And are you calling Preston I don't know, a liar?
No, I think that's why the FOIA request is important. I think that there's a lot of speculation on crypto Twitter, for better or for worse, and a lot of elements of policy. And sometimes I think it's better to make sure we cut through the noise and find the truth out before making hypotheticals of this happened or this happened.
I mean, if you haven't, just because you haven't, hey, here's the thing. I don't know if you saw my exchange with Kaplan wasn't exactly friendly. He's not sending me roses today. I'm just saying. That said, just because you didn't hear of him and a bunch of people haven't heard of him, I mean, first of all, isn't that the whole ethos of crypto, right? It's like anybody can do anything, and you're not in everyone's business here. And just because you might not have heard of him, that doesn't mean other startups who are playing what he says by the rules and doing what he can to get things done. Like that doesn't mean he doesn't exist or he's a prop put in by the SEC. No, it sounds like you think he might have been put up by folks at the DNC. Nonetheless, it's kind of weird that you guys are I don't want to say picking on somebody just because you don't agree with them and going through this whole FOIA request aspect here. When in fact, as you said, you guys have been at it for several years, and here you have a piece of legislation that may just has a fraction of a chance getting signed. Shouldn't that be the focus of what you guys do rather than focusing on other crypto companies, trying to get a bill that would actually get passed?
I mean, at least, we're a big, large organization, the Blockchain Association. So my firm, or me in particular, I'm more on the lobbying side here. Our policy shop mostly works in the FOIA requests and litigation and legal actions. But to your point, though, I think the prop, you can say, from Prometheum, that's typically how politics works. But this is what happens now, is that we're having politics really seep into crypto. And now that's where a lot of the antics and showmanship happens. And that really is a distraction from actual good quality legislation. Again, the McHenry-Thompson proposal is not perfect by any means. There's a lot of definitions that need to get tightened up. And folks from both the crypto industry, traditional finance, consumer groups, and many others are weighing in on that legislation right now. But our hope is that, hey, look, the court cases that we're seeing for the case like Ripple and Grayscale, these take years to figure out. Legislation provides definitive clarity here, and we need to make sure we have that. Otherwise, we're just going to go from court case to court case and still trying to guess what firms can and can't do. And so I think it's really important that, we keep moving this bill forward. Even if it doesn't have a fraction of a chance passing, let's keep in mind, this actually is the best chance bill passing that we've seen in crypto at any time before. So I think it's really exciting to have it.
I just don't see a reason. I don't care about Prometheum or Prometheus or whatever they're called. I don't know why that's such a big issue here. That's just me.
Ron, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
That was Ron Hammond, Blockchain Association's Director of Government Relations. I must mention Prometheum co-CEO Aaron Kaplan responded to CoinDesk last week, stating in part, Prometheum's affiliated companies are registered with the SEC and are FINRA members. Specifically, Prometheum ATS is an SEC-registered alternative trading system that matches orders for buyers and sellers of DAS under the federal securities laws. CoinDesk also reached out to the SEC for comment, but we have not yet heard back.